Hello and welcome to GMT. When the former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal was poisoned here in the UK, there was some speculation that the Russian mafia may have been involved. Now, those claims have been dismissed by the British government, which argues that only a state actor could have produced such a sophisticated nerve agent. But is it an indication of the powerful reputation of the Russian mafia? Well, let's ask Professor Mark Galeotti, a senior researcher at the Institute of International Relations in Prague. He's been studying the Russian mafia for almost 30 years. You've now written a book about it, and you are also due to give evidence at a UK parliamentary committee investigating Russian corruption and the UK. Just how far-reaching is the Russian mafia?
Well, on one level, it is the most transnational of all the Russian all global organised crime sort of structures. Pretty much beyond Antarctica, there isn't a continent where there isn't some kind of Russian mafia activity. That said, we shouldn't take it out of context. It's not some kind of massive criminal phenomenon that runs the global underworld. It's more that it's a kind of criminal service providers to everyone else's gangsters.
But this speculation that they could have, or potentially could have had access to the nerve agents that poisoned Sergei Skripal and his daughter, is that even a possibility?
Look, is it remotely a possibility? Yes. Is there any real likelihood? No. I mean, we have seen, obviously, Russian mafia carrying out killings, but they tend to do so by the most efficient and cheapest and easiest way of doing so. Exceedingly expensive military nerve agents are not their style these days.
Now, you've been studying the Russian mafia, you've been looking back at their very beginnings. It's changed very much from the vori, the so-called the thieves in translation, to what we see now. How has it changed? Well,
what's really happened is the tattooed hard men that we know and love from film and TV really have been replaced by a new breed of sort of gangster businessmen. The real money to be made in Russia is not by shaking down your corner shop. It's by massive multi-million ruble and multi-million pound scams and money laundering schemes and so forth. So very much what we see is now organised crime has become a business, and now it's effectively underworld businessmen who are in charge.
So we're not talking about these tattooed petty criminals. We're talking about very, very well organised people within the higher echelons of society. Is that right?
Well, this is the problem often that we know. We have a tendency to think, well, it's a gangster, or it's a businessman, or it's a politician. Well, in Russia, the three worlds of crime, business and politics have really not totally merged, but overlap quite dramatically. So if we look at the really senior figures, yes, they're probably not national level politicians, but they're often going to be mayors or parliamentarians or whatever. And that's what makes it very hard to know exactly what we're dealing with at any one time.
Now, here in London in particular, we hear a lot about very rich Russians coming in, buying up a lot of property. There's always a lot of speculation about that. What's the kind of difference between oligarchs and mafia? Is there, once you're that rich, is your money ever 100% clean?
No. The brutally honest answer is no one got rich, especially in the 1990s, but since totally clean. In some ways, this becomes a philosophical discussion about whether or not you had people's legs broken or you just had a mate in a government office move you a huge chunk of assets and so forth. But no, I mean, if we look at the oligarchs, in my opinion, this is purely a personal opinion, none of them can be said to be totally clean.
Oh, that's an interesting point there. But when it comes to what we're seeing in the UK, is there an issue? Of course, you're giving evidence at a select committee about this. What's your reading into this?
Well, I'd say three things very quickly. One is the main source of dirty money that's coming into Britain is not from what you'd think of as straightforward criminal activity. It's not drugs and people trafficking or whatever. It's embezzlement, it's tax fraud, it's these kind of white-collar crimes. Secondly, we absolutely should be doing something about it. Not just Russian dirty money, but all the dirty money that comes to London as one of the great money laundering hubs. But the third point I'd make is, let's not kid ourselves that this is going to change Russian policy. Putin is not going to be influenced by the fact that a bunch of Russians who stole a lot of money are losing some of that money. He's not going to be changing his policies because of that.
Dr. Mark Galeotti, author of The Vori, Russia's Super Mafia. Absolutely fascinating to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Good luck with the book.